Hello, I'm here. Oh, and there's two other people here too, which is always good. Um, I can talk to myself for hours and do. I remain my favorite debating partner, but it's always nice to see other people. um, I'm Jeremy Sherman. You all know this. Hey, Jeff, good to see you here. Good to see you here. Um, I welcome all of your comments, critiques, questions, things that you've been thinking about this week. We do this every week, and I'm hoping that, well, I'm proselytizing a approach to life that has served me well, or at least been satisfying for me for a long time, which is the ability to capture ideas as they fly by and turn them into something. The ideas are usually half baked when I come up with them. Sometimes they're half witted, um, uh, but to cultivate them. Hey, Rob, great to see you here. Great to see you here. So um, it's what I've called a word wise spiral. And it's the opposite of the dumbass spiral. So I'll start there. I was thinking I'd start someplace else, but it's related to what I was going to talk about. Um, uh, so what I've been on, the high I've been on for the last 35 years is that I come up with an idea and it's on the edge of my ability to communicate it. So I stretch to figure out how to communicate it, and I communicate it, put it out on Facebook was really where I started doing this. And then to get some response, and that stirs some more ideas, which are also on the edge of my ability to communicate it, which means that I then have to cultivate my word skills. Um, when I taught psychology and other social sciences, I've taught history, I've taught lots of different things. Um, there would be the student in the class who could barely get out the words for some concept that they have. And often there'd be smirking in the classroom because the person was having trouble spitting it out. But from my perspective, those were the promising students because they were trying to say something that was on the edge of their ability to communicate. And that meant that they were going to stretch their communication skills little by little over time. You get better at communicating your ideas or conveying them, capturing them, and then as a result, you can actually think new things because words are not just how we communicate; they're actually how we think. We're limited by the words that we employ. Anyway, hello, Michael. Nice to see you. I forgot to email you. Sorry about that. It's okay. I'm behind on various communications. Um, so here's a change I went through this week through the correction of exactly what I'm talking about, the word-wise spiral. I had written something midweek about what it's like to be slogging with your feet clay thick through what's going on in our country. It was called "How You Doing? How You Doing?" Because I was trying to reach my friends and other people and say something about the weather. We're all weathering these days as we read the news. And I said this thing that I've been saying for a while, and a friend wrote back and said, "Yeah, I'm not sure about that." And this friend made me think it through again and realized, no, I don't agree with myself about that. It's this thing I've been saying about I don't run on hope. It's an unreliable and distracting fuel. Um, uh, and she said, "Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I feel that way about faith, religious faith. But in hard times, I do run on hope." And that was enough to make me rethink it. See, what I think happens for most of us, what the intuitive thing to do is if an idea sounds sound, if it feels right, we embrace it. And we end up collecting a bunch of ideas and we don't notice the inconsistencies between our ideas. The way I've framed that sometimes is that you go through life collecting cute hamsters. Little cute pets will run by, and an idea is like a pet. And you run by, and if it's cute, you capture it and put it in your basket. And over time, you start to see, wait, some of these ideas don't play well with each other, and you start tossing out some ideas or figuring out new configurations of your ideas. That's the work that I think happens when you engage in this word-wise spiral, where you're debating yourself, where you're trying to figure out what you really feel. And And I think what goes on for the Trumpists I know is that if an idea feels good, they collect it and they don't get around to figuring out which ideas play well with each other. They don't actually think about that. If an idea gives them resolution, the feeling that it's right and that there's nothing they need to change, then that's all they need. And it doesn't even matter if it's consistent with other ideas they have. If an idea feels good, that's enough. And by feel good, what I mostly mean is it lets them off the hook. I mean, I described this, the interaction I had 2 hours with a Trump friend of mine, and I swear every idea he had and insisted on with that proud opining that people do. You know, you can look at someone and see they're really getting off on believing this. Um, it's because it lets them off the hook. So this friend says this thing about hope, and I'm thinking about it, and I say, yeah, no, I do run on hope. Everybody runs on hope. What is hope? And I started to parse it, try to figure out what is it actually. Another thing that's really important in this line of work, the word-wise spiral, is to actually think about what words mean and get out from under the positive or negative patina. You know, words smell positive or negative. Um, not all words, but words that are usually load bearing for us. They're key words in our sense of ourselves or our identity. Will tend to be positive. I've got this. At least I've got this. At least I don't have that. You know, at least I'm a patriot. I'm not woke, or at least I'm loving, not unkind. That kind of stuff. So if you actually try to figure out what those words mean, what they mean operationally, you get to um, that's what I did with hope this week. I looked at that word. Okay, what is hope? Um, I have mixed feelings about it. There is a way I do think that hope is uh, is distorting. It's like a thumb on the scale. I have long thought that hope and realism are both touted as virtues, but they're actually often at odds with each other. Hope is a thumb on the scale, saying that things will work out the way I hope they will work out. It's always subjective. That is, I don't consider myself more hopeful than the Trumpists. I just hope for very different things than they hope for. I find irritating my liberal friends who talk like they've got a premium on hope. It's the same feeling I have about my spiritual friends. I say to some of them, you don't got a corner on spirit. I'm at least as spirited as you. I just don't have this whole overlay of the supernatural thing that you've got going on. But don't claim that because you believe in the supernatural, somehow you're more spirited than other people. So I feel that way about hope too. But what is hope? Okay, well, it's in a way driven by expectation. So I've got an expectation that things will go a certain way. For example, I think that the roof on my house, I assume that the roof on my house is going to stay on my house today. Um, and so it's not even a hope, it's just an assumption, it's an expectation, it's an anticipation of something being reliable. And then what happens if that hope gets dashed? What happens if my partner dumps me or the roof gets blown off or something like that? Well, I go into a kind of grief. I have to be sad for a minute. And that grief will also include some denial. And when my mother was dying, we were friends with Paul Hawken, who's a guy who touts hope. Um, and he said she's in denial about cancer. This was a day after she was diagnosed, or hours after. He said she's in denial. I said, yeah, of course. What do you expect? You think denial's a bad thing? I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a thing that humans do. So I there are times to deny something for a while. It's part of the grieving process, you could say. And what is denial? It's kind of a hope that my roof is still on my house or that my partner will come back. It's something like that. So, no, I notice my inconsistency. I say that all of these moves that humans make are moves that I make to some degree or another, and they all have their place. I have no problem with it. Hope is not intrinsically good or bad, any more than denial is intrinsically good or bad. It just depends on where you point it and for how long and under what circumstances, that sort of thing. So, um, So I'm thinking about hope and whether I run on it as a fuel. Um, I do. Um, it's interesting. The guy who I first came up with that idea about hope with was Dan Ellsberg, who was the founder of the field called behavioral economics and known for the Pentagon Papers. And I lucked into being one of his better buddies. We had lunch every month, and he was the same way. So this guy who was an activist, he had been one of the first whistleblowers. Um, yes, that's exactly my point, Michael, is that hope is a feature of our predictive brain. Um, all organisms are anticipating. We do it through uh, consciousness, through a combination of feeling and language, thought, concepts. Um, it's why the feelings and thoughts are why we are more likely to stay in boiling water than a frog is, because we can hope that it's okay, that everything will turn out all right. Um, so yes, it's a function of that, and the question is how to manage it. Decades ago, one of the first things I came up with in this whole word-wise spiral that I am promoting, that I want you to be engaged in because it's so fucking fun. It's, it's like the only thing you can really I can rely on. Yeah, everything else comes and goes, including possibly my country, but this curiosity, this I've been saying for years. I don't run on hope. I run on curiosity and productivity. Um, that's true, but I also do run on hope. And why? Because it's a feature of my predictive brain. So anyway, Dan Ellsberg and I had this thing where we both said, um, yeah, the world's going to hell. This is not turning out well. No matter how cynical you get, you can't keep up. And at the same time, we both said, that doesn't put a dent in our work. The guy he was amazing. I mean, in 92, he's still an activist just before he's dying, and curious as could be. I mean, just astonishing how curious he was in his last days. The questions he asked me, not because he thought I was an expert, but because he was curious. We were curious together. That was our jam. Um, and curious about everything. He said I was the only friend he could talk to about all subjects: his sex life, his politics, his psychological work, the behavioral economics. We had the full range. We uh, he marveled at my lack of sex life because the guy was extremely sexual. Um, uh, my lack of interest in it. He knew me when I was deeply interested, like obsessed with it, and then he knew me afterwards. Anyway, so we both sort of said hope is an unreliable and distracting and distorting fuel, and we didn't want to run on it. Um, but then he would also engage in the stuff about are we doomed or not, as if it did make a difference whether we were. And I would quote back to him the Obama quote I like: "It's not the end of the world till the end of the world." But even that's got some hope about it. Anyway, here's what I'm thinking about hope. So it's this expectation that's dashed, that's insistent on itself despite being dashed. You know, my girlfriend dumped me, and I am uh, hoping she'll come back. That kind of thing. Um, it it is another feature of our predictive brain, Michael. This relates is I suspect that placebo effects are a very adaptive trait in humans. And I'm not just talking about medical placebo effects. I think that church is a placebo effect. I think that lots of things that humans do are placebo effects. Um, they're ways in which we can engage in a kind of what I call myopium, the pain-killing effects of short-sightedness. The sense that, I once was lost, but now I'm found, all of that stuff that, this was the insight I need, the breakthrough I needed to release myself from doubt and anxiety, confidence, faith, all of that stuff. I think it would be really adaptive in us. I think it's maladaptive in the long run because it can doom us to staying in boiling water forever. Um, and let's see. Jeff Cheney says, watching Jeremy Sherman videos, not nearly enough people are doing so. I hope that more people will watch them. I'm dealing with that hope. How am I dealing with it? The way that a gambler deals with intermittent reinforcement. I've gotten some enthusiasm at times, um, and then less so. But anyway, they give you hope. Interesting, Jeff. I want to ask you about this because a lot of people think that my videos make them they're discouraging. People see me as a pessimist, um, uh, and pessimism, like hope, is subjective. What does it mean that someone to call someone a pessimist is basically saying, compared to what I think is likely to happen, you think things will more go worse. So yes, you too seem to find hope in my videos. I find hope in them. They're inspiring, and I mean I'm trying to do that. Um, I do point out to these people who accuse me of pessimism that if I had predicted today in the 1970s, I would have been considered pathologically pessimistic. Um, they give the ideas I'm playing with, I think, probably are whether I have any effect on how things will end, for example, in front of a firing squad or tossed into a mass grave. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get melodramatic about it, but at least I think I'm trying to track it. And there may be something inspiring in that. Hell, I mean, even if the whole of America turns around and we suddenly wake up, which is a hopeful notion that some of my friends who accuse me of pessimism claim, which is that we're all going to wake up. Um, I am still aging and in decline. I mean, I feel it physically. Um, so my hope is that I'm at least taking careful notes through this word-wise spiral. I'm taking careful notes on what the actual fuck we are, what it's like to be human. I mean, it just feels like that that's that feels like comfort enough. I've dropped the whole dating mating thing. I've dropped playing live music. Um, I'm not eating like I used to. That is, I'm not getting that satisfaction. I'm not purchasing like I used to. What am I running on? I'm running on that hope of taking more careful notes, the hope that I'll have a new idea tomorrow that comes from the ideas I've had. So back to this thing about hope. So I got these expectations of, you could say, of being maintained to the manner in which I'm accustomed or better. That would be kind of a human hope that we would go from strength to strength, even though we're in decline. So this is one of the challenges we're up against. What I noticed though is that I think it's best if I think that hope is distorting. For example, um, if I hope that everybody will wake up and sober up and get grounded in my worldview, I'm actually distorting my understanding of what humans do. I'm not looking at what they do, I'm looking at what I want them to do. It's a kind of a wishful thinking. And I'm trying to avoid two kinds of distortion. One is wishful thinking or magical thinking, but the other is dreadful thinking. Dreadful thinking that's a term I coined for it must be true because you don't like it. Because it feels uncomfortable, it must be true. I think that they are orthogonal. How I feel about what's happening and what's happening are kind of separate things. Um, yes, so too much hope is confirmation bias because again, hope is always local. When someone says I hope for something, I hope for a better world. Sounds selfless enough, but by my standards, that's what they mean by it. And the Trumpists are no different from us on that. They hope for a better world. They're trying to make America great again, but by their standards. And that's some of the attraction to a Rorschach blot like "Make America Great Again." Everybody gets to decide what their own version of greatness is. So one thing I've been saying to Trumpists is, you want to bring back something you liked about America in the past? Get in fucking line. Everybody feels that way. You think you've got some exceptional access to that because it resonates with you. So yes, it is confirmation bias. It's I hope that my dreams for a better world will come to pass. That kind of thing. Well, I also think there's a problem with safe hope. People who are safe being hope. Someone said to me yesterday on Facebook, I've been in philosophical groups and theological groups. This is a guy who had sent me a quote that he thought confirmed my perspective. It was from Thomas Merton. It was a Christian quote. And I said, yeah, I'll take the bait on this. I have deep respect for religion. I have deep antipathy to it. I find it vile. And I really respect it. And I'm stuck with that confusion about it. But he wrote back and he said, yeah, no, I've been in lots of groups where they won't get into the nitty gritty the way you do. You seem courageous. And I said, I'm not courageous. I'm safe. I'm safe and comfortable and lucky. And I choose to use that to be more realistic as I can be, including as realistic as I can be about how unrealistic we humans have to be just to get by. So what I'm saying is I find it annoying when I deal with someone who is safe and successful and comfortable, who is claiming the virtue of hope and magical thinking. Leave the magical thinking to the desperate. Don't hog it. If you're successful, you should counter your success with more doubt, more skepticism, and let the people who are desperate deal more in hope. You should use your safety to be more realistic if you can afford to be. That's what I'm trying to do. Whether I'm doing a good job is not the question. I don't get to decide whether I'm being realistic. If I was being unrealistic, I'd be the last to know, because I'd be unrealistic. But I do get to pursue it, and that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm inviting us all to do here. And yeah, I'm working on my production values, but I don't know that it's as much fun as the alternatives for people who are desperate. If you're having a hard time for whatever reason, and it's not just circumstantial, some people are just born twitchier. So I don't even get to decide who should be more realistic. I do know that we need to not be realistic, all of us. And I do know that not being realistic will get us killed. It will end civilization. I don't know it, but I have a strong confidence that we have depleted the Earth's carrying capacity, a lot of the Earth's carrying capacity for self-reassuring bullshit. We are frogs in boiling water saying it's all right. So this is the challenge I'm dealing with. I love the Pareto principle, by the way. Let's see. You need only 1 out of 5 people to get what you're talking about to make an 80% difference. I don't know if that works with the Pareto. You'll have to explain to me how that works with Pareto optimality. Let's see if I could. Whether the Pareto optimality is about Pareto optimality is there's no more room for a deal. Nobody will trade with anybody else because they've all got their optimum, their local optimum. There's no more room for a deal. So I'm not sure how that relates, but try this out. 1 out of 5 people to get what you're talking about to make an 80% difference. Okay. There's a hopeful notion that's been around a long time like this. And it's very positive. It's encouraging. It's hopeful. I'll give you one example of it. The 100th Monkey was popular in the early 90s. It was a book written by a guy named Ken Kesey. And it's a book about how a few monkeys figure out that you can break open shellfish with a stone. And then suddenly it propagates and all the monkeys know it. So if you get to 100 monkeys, then it saturates. And even at the time, even in the early 1990s, when I was still transitioning from my hopeful pride about being that I was an anti-war kind of activist. Your standard liberal, this was before the New Age. I was pulling out of it just as it was turning into the New Age. It was more counterculture, hippie sort of thing. Even then, I recognized there was a problem with it, which is um, it doesn't just work for the good people, it works for the bad people too. Trump has 1 out of 5 people who get what he's talking about. And yeah, they're making an 80% difference. The 100th monkey is not that only good monkeys or good ideas pass this way. It's also true of bad ideas. So that's an example of how I want to work with ideas. Um, I want to work with paired opposites. And um, there are some tricks to reading memes that I wish more people would um, employ. One of them is you get a meme and it's branded to your lifestyle and it says something deep and meaningful sounding and all of that, branded to your opponents. So you take a meme and say, okay, what if Trump said this? Would I still agree with it? No. Okay, that shows that there's a dependency. It's conditional. Another way to look at whether it's conditional is to look for an exception to it. If you see some always do X kind of meme or adage or moral statement, something like that, uh, if you find even one exception to it, then apparently it's not an always rule. And it also relates to this, one way I talk about it is that all truisms are half truisms. And if you want to get to the other half of it, ask yourself why, if it's so damn true, do people have to keep on saying it? So, for example, a friend sent me a video. This is a Facebook friend. I've never met him, but he sends me stuff from time to time that he's enthusiastic about. And he sent me a video that had meant a lot to him. It was one of those short AI made videos with the moody music and the B-roll that's very inspiring. All this seductive stuff, the rhetoric that comes with AI videos and other videos. Yeah, I'm interested in how you strip that off and look at the content by itself. This is part of that word-wise spiral. You actually parse it. You don't give a fuck who said it. You don't give a fuck how it's ornamented. You actually look at the content and you try and drive out what are the words actually saying? What is the implication of it? And then you will find its paired opposite. So his videos were about this video that inspired him was about how how uh, when you care about other people's approval, it's a prison. You know, so okay, take that idea. It's a prison. It's also a paradise. Remember, last week I looked up the etymology of the word paradise, and it means walled around. It means a bubble. Um, and the Garden of Eden was the first paradise, and language busted us out of it. That's why we were dispelled from the Garden of Eden. In the beginning, it was not the word of God; it was the word God. It was people using words. So this is a fundamental interest of mine. That whole transition where we suddenly had words and concepts, and no wall couldn't be trespassed. That is, you can come up with last words, but someone can come up with further words about it. So anyway, he sends me this video and he's saying, yeah, caring about what other people think is a prison. And I said, I agree wholeheartedly. It's half true. It's also a paradise. Think of the Trumpists who feel like they're in paradise because they are walled around by affirming friends who agree with them. So, yeah, you can call it a prison. From the outside, it might look like a prison, like they're in a cage. But you're in a cage too. We're all in a cage. And not only that, I don't want to go batshit crazy. And like I said earlier, if I am going batshit crazy, I'd be the last to know. So I am reliant on other people's opinions. I have to be selective about whose opinions matter to me. And I don't want to be selective exclusively in terms of confirmation bias. That's exactly what the Trumpists do. The Trumpists have declared holy war, and anybody who disagrees with them isn't even worth listening to. They're outside the walls. So, no, I don't want to do that. If I don't want to be an asshole, if I don't want to become batshit crazy, then I have to expect some anxiety when people disagree with me. And so yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you take an idea and um, you really get clear on it. You strip it of the lifestyle brand it's associated with. You strip it of the ornamentation, the rhetorical music of it, the attractive, charismatic person who says it, or the profound, deep voice that AI generated that that says it. You strip that stuff and you look at the idea as the idea and you operationalize the term the way we just did about hope, the way that Mike just did when he says it's a feature of our predictive brain, and you start to really get clear on where it is, and then you'll find that you're stuck with these paired opposites. That I don't want to care about what other people think, and I do want to care about what other people think, and I'm stuck with that for the rest of my life. And that's the word-wise spiral. You work yourself up this spiral by getting clearer on what words mean, and then thinking more deeply and being able to express it more, and just taking careful notes. There'll be different notes from mine. It doesn't matter. I don't. That's not the issue. Um, the it's that's fun. It's been fun for me. Um, let's see. So what I was saying at the beginning, so long ago, was anybody who's got any ideas from this past week, please share them. I want to hear your ideas. We can play with them together. The other thing is that I can't. Um, I realized early on I'm not an only brain. I don't suffer from only brainchild syndrome, where I have to protect my one big idea. There's satisfaction in a population of ideas that keep on changing. There's a way in which you can relax into letting one of them go if it's not working so well. So I don't think I'll ever say again this thing about I don't run on hope. It's an unreliable fuel. I run on it, and I run with a conscientiousness to the ways in which it's a dangerous fuel. It can distort things. Okay. And you're always trying to guess which is best to pay attention to and which isn't worth paying attention to. Yeah, you're evaluating the ideas on their merits, um, uh, on their raw merits. You strip away all of the satisfaction, the affordances for milking might be a way to talk about it. Um, a lot of ideas are bought based on how they make us feel about ourselves to say them. Um, and that's a kind of milking for affirmation. Uh, uh, and and this is another one. I've long said to name it is to tame it. Only last night with a friend did I realize no, actually, what I mean by that is that um, I've meant two things by it. One is that you spot what flies by in thought and conversation, and that helps you tame it. Another is that you dangerously inoculate yourself with words. Oh, that's just projection, is an example of that kind of taming. But the other one is if I can name my own need for affirmation, I am in a better position to manage it and exercise it safely, my vanity, let's say, um, than if I deny that I have it. So if I can recognize my appetite to embellish myself, ornament my plumage with ideas that make me feel good about myself, I'm more likely to manage it. And this is also a theme for me this week. Let's see. I heard this interesting quote: "A man casts his vote for the same reason he does anything else in life, because it feels good." That's a great quote. Um, and uh, and then it's really important to me to say "me too." I mean, in a way, this is all a giant Me Too movement, where I say it's not just a man; it's the man I am casts a vote for the same reason. Once again, to name it is to tame it. If I can admit that that is true, not just of other uh, degenerative souls, but of me, then I have a better chance of managing it, and managing it with irony, meaning that I will admit to it to other people so we can both keep an eye on it. and admit to it with other people also is like melding in a game where you actually are the first to let something be known. I have vanity with decent folks, and this is a good test of whether they're decent folks. They can say, "Me too," and then we can laugh at it together. We need to manage hope, just we need to manage pessimism. It's about finding balance. Yes, okay, so balance. Yeah, I agree with that. It's about finding. One way I've talked about it is I don't want to be optimistic or pessimistic. I mean, I don't want to be a pessimist, which is I don't want to roll myself up in a ball and not look at reality. That is, I don't want to hide from reality. That was a term 30 years ago, pessimism. Um, I want to look at upside and downside possibilities. And I don't want to just be enjoying the fun of casting votes because it feels good. Speaking of that quote, and I'll come back to what Mark says here in just a second. I haven't read it yet. My PhD is in epistemology. It's actually in what they call evolutionary epistemology, which is a whole lot of syllables and $10 words for something that is really quite straightforward. It's basically how do we shop among interpretations? And I think I've mentioned this before, that a real pivot happened for me at a time when I was in the early 90s and okay, mid 90s. And I'm realizing, yeah, that dog don't hunt. My whole spiritual dharma thing, I started to call it smarmy dharma, smarma. Um, that dog don't hunt. What am I going to go with next? And 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 it was a pivotal moment because I realized I'm not going to come up with another dogma that I can ornament myself with. I'm going to study how we shop among interpretations. And I realized maybe 2 years ago that actually what I'm talking about is shopistemology, how we shop. And very much like Michael's quote, we shop because it feels good. And we shop for ideas that we shop for bling. We shop for things that ornament us well. We shop to feel like monarchy, like we're kings, like we're buyers in a buyer's market. There's a whole satisfaction in that. That feeling like you're the one who gets to choose which is the superior product. I opine, therefore I am. That's a whole identity way in which ideas appeal to us. Um, and then there are all sorts of parallels. I've made some videos about shopistemology because the parallels between shopping for ideas and shopping for products they're right in line with this interesting quote. Just got here watching from the beginning. Who says time travel is impossible? We haven't been talking about that. Oh, time travel. I see what you're saying. Yes, you're watching from the beginning. There you go. Oh, by the way, I turned off the monetizing of these videos, meaning that I didn't think it. I'm making almost nothing off of YouTube. It's a labor of love for me at these days. There was a month I got $1,000, but no, it's chump change at this point. And I don't need that money in order to keep food on my table. So I turned this into something that isn't monetized. Tell me if you're still getting ads. Because the point was, I didn't want to break up the conversation with you having to watch some ad. Um, but if you're still getting them, that's interesting to me. I don't know that about YouTube, so let me know. Let's see. Yes, time travel is possible in this sense. I'm not sure. I wouldn't know whether time travel is physically impossible. I just don't know. Time is the great mystery. Terry and I talk about it a lot. It's very complicated. Um, how it works. He's got some deep ideas I can't even express here. The ads forced me to rewatch to catch what I missed. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. No ads here. Glad to hear it. Hello, Louise. Louise Pryor. You're Louise King, in case you didn't know it. Time to update yourself. Uh, Louise is a dear friend, a long. She's been an enthusiast about this work for quite a while. So much so she went back and got a master's degree. She's a math teacher in a high school near CERN, and one of my main muses. As are those of you who show up here. You're my muses. Because unlike that quote about caring what other people think is a prison, no, I need my muses. I don't want to end up batshit crazy. So the fact that people still think that this is relevant and say things to me that don't feel like straight up interventions helps me a lot. It helps me through low times. This last week was a bit of a low time for me. I was having trouble making that animation. I'm still looking for better software for making animated dialogues. I made a dialogue this week that if you can stand it, I encourage you to watch it. It relates to this thing we're talking about with hope. It's something I've been working on for a while. I almost overworked it. So here's what that animation is I made this week. It was a conversation between someone who claims spiritualism uh, explains life and someone who denies that, a science-based materialist, but is actually a closet dualist. A dualist is someone who believes that there's two realms, like matter and spirit. But I'm arguing these days that scientists deny that. They claim that they're materialists, but they end up employing the concept of information um, in a way that is really dualist. I do believe there is information in the world, but only through epistemology, only because there are organisms that are interpreting things. There's no information in the physical world, in the non-living world. There's only information when it's about something for a self, real or imaginary. So we can talk about this all being information for God, but we're still assuming that there's a self who's interpreting it. And God saw that it was good, is still dealing with the real issue, which is explaining how interpretation emerges. And so this may seem a bit esoteric, but here's what I'm trying to get at in it. So this is a conversation with the spiritual person. The scientist starts asking questions to the spiritual guy. The spiritual guy says, yeah, matter doesn't explain life, so there must be something else, spirit or something like that. And then he goes on and says, spirit is everywhere. And the sciencey guy says, well, if it's everywhere, how does it explain life? And he says, well, it enters and exits um, uh, as souls. And the scientisty guy says, yeah, I don't know, that doesn't hold up. You're describing it as always already everywhere. Spirit is always already everywhere. And then you're saying it explains life. It's an unexplained explanation that doesn't even explain life. And then the spiritual guy says, well, what do you think? He said, well, I'm a materialist. The scientist says, I'm a materialist. And then he starts talking, but pretty soon he's talking about, well, everything is information. And then there are these special molecules, DNA, which is an information-bearing molecule. And the spiritual guy says, yeah, you sound like a closet dualist. And they start to recognize a problem that I think's been there for thousands and thousands of years when we're trying to figure out what the actual fuck we are. We alternate between two perspectives on it. One is dualism with its unexplained explanations. That is, if you talk to a scientist, they cannot explain what information is. They just assume it. If you talk to a spiritual person, they'll do the same thing. So you've got this dualism with its unexplained explanations that don't even explain what you're trying to explain, which is what is life or what is mind or what is consciousness. And then you got the materialists who keep on saying, well, yeah, there's just matter. And therefore, there's no difference between us and other material things. It's just, believe it. I mean, if you're outside these fields where I spend all my time, I once told a friend about this. She was a kindergarten teacher, and I was explaining this stuff to her. She couldn't believe the ideas that have traction in the academic world, and she's right. I mean, even Robert Sapolsky, who I respect a lot, has gotten silly about this. He wants to say, well, since there's only matter, then we're determined. We're machines. And there is no free will. There is no difference, really. and therefore we shouldn't blame people for how they behave. Well, wait a second. If there's no free will, first of all, you saying choose determinism? You're trying to persuade me, trying to change my mind about something. So is that determined? And anyway, if you say we shouldn't blame people, then you're actually appealing to our will. Now, I don't believe in free will. I think that's a mistake. Um, uh, okay, so I'm reading Chris Farley. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you here. Let's see. A human is not complete without dualism, and dualism, in my opinion, is right and left side brain activity where the male or female. Otherwise, you end up either an alpha or a beta, which is an alpha, which an alpha is toxic masculinity. Chris, that's a bunch of terms, and I'd have to unpack them like the way I'm talking about here. I don't find as satisfying that pat answer as I think you do. I'm saying that dualism is something that is possible with language. I don't think chimpanzees or dogs can deal in dualism. I'm saying it's a very natural tendency for any language using organism. Um, I have to keep on caveating this. I don't know why. It's fascinating to me how little people respect the difference that language makes in us. All the way back, I've been reading a lot of intellectual history, and you got people who are trying to figure out if there's a difference between human and animal rationality. I'm reading an intellectual history of the ideas around Darwin's time. They're struggling with. They don't seem to notice how radically different language makes us from other creatures. We're very much like them. We're very different. And so figuring out what that difference is, language makes it possible for me to use terms like you're using them here, like we use them, like scientists use them and claim they're being rigorous when I actually think it's stuffy and fluffy at the same time. Right, left brain, got these various things. We take language for granted, is what I'm saying. We've been swimming in it. We're completely parasitic on our culture's language. That's what we're born with. And if we're not born with that, you see radical differences. For example, in feral children, wild children, and all of that. But really pay attention to language and what a difference it makes. And one of the main differences it makes is that I can reify. I can take a concept and treat it like it's a solid thing. It's what I call symbolic pseudo-efficient cause, spec, symbolic pseudo-efficient cause. So efficient cause is cause and effect. A billiard ball knocking another billiard ball. And what you hear in scientists and philosophers and all of this is you take a concept, an abstraction, like consciousness turns on this thing. And it's gizmos, it's all billiard ball kind of behavior with these total abstractions that are completely, they're often unpacked. I just described one. Information causes this. Okay. Well, I'm inviting us to unpack that. A human is not complete without dualism. I'm going to just take that part of it. Humans are not complete. Nothing in this world is complete, in the technical sense of the word complete, in that everything is resolvable as true and false. Nothing is that way. There are undecidables. There will be undecidables. To me, humans feel intensely not complete because we have language, and language gives us the impression that we can get last words. I believe we're all part of a frequency, thus the language we speak. Yeah. So, Chris, I don't know if we've talked before. It might be nice to have a conversation one-on-one sometime. Let me just say, you are illustrating the points I'm making. This is what is touted these days as poetic naturalism. It's there are people who actually say this is the way we should do science. I don't agree. I want to explain what I am in strictly physical terms, and I don't want to resort to abstractions. We're all part of a frequency. A frequency, okay, vibes. For years, I was a vibes guy. I lived on a commune where it was all about the vibes. But we don't mean hertz. We don't mean that. We mean something that uh, is uh, is somehow dualistically supernatural. So one sense that someone says it's energy or it's higher vibrations or any of that stuff, they're not talking about volts, they're not talking about hertz. They're talking in a dualistic way. I am opposed to poetic naturalism. I write poetry. I was good friends with the 2020 poet laureate Nobel Prize winner. She even liked some of my poetry, though at one point we were both tipsy one night and she said, "You're no poet." And I thought, wow, that's great. I love poetry, but that is not what I'm doing when I'm trying to figure out what the actual fuck I am. So while anyone can get the satisfaction of feeling like, wow, I really am paying attention to the big whole world when I say that we are vibrations or frequencies or right and left brain and all of this stuff, it's so much fun to play there. And one of the reasons it's fun to play there is you can't be proven wrong because it's all poetry. And so I'm saying that's a fine game. Lots of people play it. I played it for a while. The way I thought about I made a video about this a while ago. So imagine this guy, he stumbles into church, and it's the first time in his life he's thinking about the big picture. He gets really excited about it, that he's able to feel like a genius for thinking about the big picture. And then he starts shopping among different religions, and it's so exciting. He feels like that he can name all of these different theories and all of that. He watches all the TED Talks. He watches all the YouTube videos where all the different people have, there's something like 325 different theories of consciousness. He's all excited about it. And then he finds one that really feels good to him. So he ornaments himself with that theory, and he goes out and sells it. And one of the fun things about selling it is you're not going to be proven wrong. There's a chance that you'll rise up and you will be one of the fads that people are enthusiastic about in philosophy, biophilosophy, the cosmic in religion. I'm talking about religion still. But so you can go out and sell your religion, and it's one of many, and it feels like you're making progress because you're out there proselytizing. At the same time, the fun of it is that no one can prove you wrong. You're dealing with wild cards and trump cards. You're saying, I've got this big picture. I can picture the supernatural, and you can't prove me wrong. And I say it beats everything you're saying. And everybody's out there squabbling like that. It's lots of fun. But what happened to me was I said, actually, I want to have a standard by which to decide which is more likely than which. I'm saying that we do the same in biophilosophy. It feels more sciencey, but it's still full of a bunch of dualistic claptrap. These abstract terms that we're not thinking about, and there are people who sell this and say, well, it's all in how you look at it, let 1,000 flowers bloom. I'm saying, no, that's not interesting to me anymore. It was for a while. Okay, so let me see. There's a couple of comments here. I'm not into poetic naturalism. I'm into naturalism. I'm into poetry. But I don't want my poetry to contaminate my naturalism, and I do want my naturalism to inform the poetry. That's how I am about it. I feel the same way about analysis and advocacy. I want my analysis to inform my advocacy. I do not want my advocacy to be informing my analysis, and it's a major problem for humans. Let's see. I do not believe in God, but I do believe in energy. I believe our energy lives on forever. Chris, that's fine. You're welcome to think that. You're totally entitled. I believe everything is connected. These are fine things. They're not what we're doing here. If you post them here, I will kick the tires. That's what I'm doing. And I'm inviting you guys to kick the tires on what I'm saying too. But if you simply come on here and start stating these things, pronouncements, you're actually giving me examples of what I'm arguing against. You have these opinions. They make you feel smart. They make you feel like a genius. You admire the people who agree with them. One of the satisfactions of that is that you don't have to unpack them. For example, energy is measured in ergs or in pounds per square inch, potential energy in calories. I don't think that's what you mean. I don't bet that's what you're actually talking about. I think you're talking about a different kind of a dualistic energy. And you also believe it lives on forever. Okay, fine. That's poetry. I can dance to a song like that. It's not what I'm doing here. Hi there. Uh, Here is an idea I had this week. I think that this time is going show. Humans have not stabilized the addiction symbiosis to written language yet. Niels, I get where you're going here. The idea that we need to learn moral and compassion is based on fear coming from our disrupted relationship to our own memory. Uh, okay. Um, let's see. I would say that I see if this fits with what you're saying, Niels. And hi, Niels. It's nice to see you here. Um, uh, we are this mid-sized mammal that is dealing with this newfangled contraption called language. And we're very addicted to language. I couldn't live without it. I mean, I could, but not for long. And it does make for a Tower of Babel effect. Try this out, Tower of Babel. So remember, I mean, I'm certainly not a religious person, and this speaks to Chris's next point. Though I will say, in just as a sidebar to Chris, the others are worse. We'll see what religion is doing to the world right now. I get that argument a lot. My idea is better than theirs, and therefore my idea is right. I call it defaulty logic. Since they're wrong, it proves by fault that I'm right by default. I call it exempt by contempt. I have such contempt for religion that proves that I'm onto something better. There's a lot of that. I get that from Trumpists all the time. I mean, I asked one of my Trumpist friends. I'm coming right back to you, Nils. I'm coming right back to that. But I asked one of my Trumpy friends whether he was at all afraid that when he was at all concerned about the autocratic tendencies in Trump, and he said, "Well, Biden was a pure autocrat." That's his answer. So that it's not actually dealing with the question I posed to him. Okay, so coming back to this thing, so you got this the Tower of Babel effect. You ever been to a party where there's a lot of people talking, and you're trying to have a conversation with someone, and so you end up talking louder because you gotta be heard through the noise, and everybody's doing that. So pretty much the volume's going up and up and up. What's going to happen in that party eventually is that one or two voices are going to dominate it, and they will be the loudest, most shocking, most intense, most makes you feel like a genius for free voices. That's what will happen. So, Nils, to your point, I think that's what we're dealing with. And I'd love to hear your follow-up, especially if I'm not getting your idea. The idea that we need to learn moral and compassion is based on fear coming from our disrupted relationship to our own memory. That's complicated. See if you can unpack that for me. We still got another half hour. See if you can say that clearer, because I really want to understand what you're saying. And you may have missed the beginning of this, but I adore it when someone comes up with idea like this. Nils, I think you're speaking English as a second language. in which case, hats off to you because I mean, I speak some Spanish, um, but no, I mean, when people, I can have a conversation sort of about philosophy in Spanish, but not great. So see if you can unpack that a little bit, even run it through a translator so I can understand what you're saying. I really want to understand what you're saying here. But I'm having trouble with the idea that we need to learn more. Morale and compassion is based on fear coming from our disrupted relationship to our own memory. There's a lot in there. You know, the other challenge I've been dealing with for years is the size of an idea. How many words does it take? I try to make them as short as possible, and there's a limit. If you got, especially if you're packing a whole lot in. This is a fundamental problem for people who are trying to figure out what the actual fuck we are, because there's a lot of assumptions that have to be spelled out as we do that work. Yeah, Anne Sans Ease, you mentioned ego, and I'm making a video, soon to be a minor motion picture, in which I start out saying this. Look at the big moguls, the people who are making enormous money these days. What demand have they tapped and milked? Vanity. Look at all of the media related stuff. They've all tapped into vanity. And what I'm saying is we need a different relationship with vanity. You think I'm going to start to talk now as though vanity is a bad thing. It is not. It is a human necessity. Ego is a human necessity. What we actually mean by ego is not ego, but id. Id is this impulse to feel exceptional, to get what we want, to not be thwarted in this world, to not be challenged, okay? I am challenged nonstop, as are you. And largely because, I mean, I'm challenged in the physical world, though less so than most organisms, because I live in this comfortable world. Um, uh, but I am challenged because I live in the Tower of fucking Babel. I'm conviction impaired. I'm confidence impaired by the fact that you're here and might disagree with me, and that I could end up in battle with you over something that, you know, the very stuff I'm ornamenting myself with, the ways I feel good about myself, are being challenged by the ways you feel good about yourself. And that's buzzkill, and I can't afford much of it because I'm trying to keep comfort in my own skin, and so I'm gonna insist on what I believe. I'm gonna insist I deserve more. I'm saying this about all of us. It's the Me Too thing again, that we all are like this because we live in language as well as the real world. And language makes us, it's just confidence eroding. Even if I'm not threatened by you personally or by Trumpists, more likely, by their existence and their ideas and their ornamentation and their ego, I'm still capable of imagining things that no other creature can imagine. I mean, we're all trudging through a confidence eroding sandstorm of real and imaginable past, present, and future threats and missed opportunities. We are, as Ernest Becker describes us, gods with anuses. We can imagine infinite good, in our own infinite perfection, and we see where we fall short. We're stuck living in the real world while dreaming these idealistic things in language. So no wonder we are vain. No wonder we are animated by our own egotism. And my whole point, it's like central for me, is we need a different relationship with our own vanity. To name it is to tame it. If I can simply admit that I've got vanity, then I can monitor it and exercise it safely. Put it on the table where we all can monitor each other's vanity and make sure that it's done safely. So yeah, I'm extremely egotistical and vain. I'm just not egotistical and vain enough to pretend I'm not. That ego is somehow beneath me, as if I could just transcend my ego. to think that I could transcend my ego is as ridiculous as thinking that I could simply decide to stop eating or give up hope. It's not in the human repertoire to give that shit up. You can't simply lobotomize that stuff out. So, yes, when people say ego, I say, me too. Me too. We all have it. And the question is what you do with it. My favorite line from all pop music is Stevie Wonder saying, "Everybody's got a thing, but some don't know how to handle it." The whole question is, how do you handle your ego? Not how do you pretend to get rid of it, because that's not handling it. Anyway. Let's see. I'm still waiting for Niels to clarify that. But look what he did here. He said, "Here's an idea I had this week." I love that. Bring out your ideas. There is some. They say ego. I say hmm. Um, yeah. Okay. And I'd want to hear what you mean by I go hmm. Um, yeah. A lot of people, I should tell you, find me to be a pain in the ass. You know this, especially uh, up close and personal. Like if we take a walk every week or something like that. I'm very irritated because I'm often listening more closely to what people say than they're listening. We say what we need to hear to feel good about ourselves. And I come along with this whole word-wise spiral thing, and I'm tapping, double clicking on the ideas and trying to figure out what they're saying. So I want to understand what you mean by I go, hmm. And I want to understand what Nils says. Um, uh, I've said it before. I'll sometimes say to someone, uh, my bad, I was listening too closely to what you're saying. I'll be more inattentive from now on. And I mean that as a jab. Um, I have no problem with jabbing or being jabbed. I mean, I don't like being jabbed, but if I don't want to be an asshole, I have to expect some anxiety. And so jabbing back at me is fine. And not only that, you kind of have to be okay with being jabbed if you want to engage at a deeper level than the surface level. I can't say, "How dare you jab me?" That's a way of shutting down conversation. And so basically, if I make someone wrong for challenging me, I'm basically inviting them to keep me in the dark. And I'll do that with some, but I'm careful about it. The idea that has haunted me this last week is that there is one a-hole I can never escape. Are you speaking here about Trump, or are you speaking about the one a-hole? Oh, that you're the a-hole? Is that what you mean, Jeff? Um, yeah, that is a problem. I have to live with myself. You have to live with yourself. Um, yes, you got it, got it. No, okay. So here's where we have to. So people will sometimes come to me and say, "You're an expert on a holes." Um, I wonder if I'm an a hole. Am I an a hole? And I say, first of all, I'm not an expert. You can't be an expert on a holes. The people who claim to be experts are usually a holes. I mean, Trump thinks he's an expert on who's an a hole. Um, and second of all, if you're asking that question, if you're wondering whether you're an a hole, um, uh, then you're probably not. Uh, because a-holes don't wonder if they're a-holes. This actually relates to something I had to deal with in writing my book, What's Up with A-holes, which is a lot of people will say you shouldn't label people as a-holes. Um, uh, you know, don't be a name caller, which is itself name calling. You're a name caller, it's name calling. But also, you shouldn't uh, block them in like that. You shouldn't peg them. You shouldn't, pigeonhole them like that, they'll say. Um, this is the kind of thing that I get from people who are conflict averse and then wrap it up they ornament it with it's immoral to engage in conflict. And besides, conflict doesn't work and you should never name call and all that sort of stuff. So, but what I realized as I was writing the book is, yeah, I'm calling them an a-hole to try to get them to not be. They're the ones who are pigeonholing themselves. They're the ones who want to be stuck in a position where they never have to change again. That's what's up. That's right. Thank you, Sir Crumbly Blunder Trust. Real a-holes never give it 1 second's consideration. That's true, except there's one exception that's worth looking at, which is that they will sometimes an a-hole will sometimes turn it into a positive. Yeah, I'm an a-hole. That's why I'm so good. So this is a standard move you'll get. We got it this last week from someone. I think it might have been J.D. Vance or someone said, "Well, if I'm this, then I'm glad to be." Hitler said something similar. Well, if I am a rabble rouser, then it's a good thing. Basically, what he said. As long as I am aware, then I am okay. But I can easily slip into unawareness at the drop of a hat. Uh, okay. I live most of my life unaware. We all do, I think. We run on habit. You know, but you're onto something really important, which is that to me, by definition, an a-hole is consistently unaware. The real word for a-hole is absolutist, and it means dissolved away from anything that might disturb the habits they're running on. Um, Absolute originally meant dissolved away from any influences. Why we call absolute zero, and also why it can't be reached, because actually there's no way to fully insulate to where you get down to absolute zero. But what we're talking about is an insulation from any other perspective on ourselves but our perspective on ourselves. So I'm running on a habit. Habit is much easier to run on than the alternatives, like second guessing yourself. And it's what I call second guessing. Am I a good person? Yeah, I checked with myself 3 times, and every time I said, yes, I am a good person, therefore I am a good person. It's that kind of thing that you get from an asshole. So an asshole is playing superhero, and their kryptonite is introspection. And their superpower is avoiding it. That's how I think about it. That's why we end up saying, will you look at yourself? You know, just take a look at yourself. Can you hear yourself talking? That kind of thing. And yeah, they're fully inoculated against that. So no, I don't think you're an asshole. I'm sorry. Um, but you're dealing with the anxiety around it. And Kyle mentioned that he does too. Um, yeah, there's, I think that changes a little with age. Not necessarily in a good way, but I think, um so I deal with fear that I'm an asshole, or the uncomfortable sense that I've been an asshole. But I would say the biggest relief I've ever gotten in my life is recognizing fallibilism, that this is all guesswork, that life has always been guesswork. It's a struggle for existence. It's a struggle because it's guesswork. It's iffy. And that I am making mistakes and will make mistakes, and that there are plenty of things that I have uh, confidence were good moves that will turn out to be bad moves. And I'm not glib about it. That is, I really am trying to minimize my mistakes. I take it seriously, but that there's no escaping that. There is no sure thing. And this comes back to Chris's point about completeness. I am incomplete that way. I will never have the formula. So I think there's possibly a way to get more comfortable with your discomfort over time, but it's still uncomfortable. There were times this week I didn't feel good. I lay down, that kind of thing. Okay, I was thinking about the relationship between written language. I'll say, I will try again. It's really hard to articulate in the same time as I try to listen to you. I understand. I am terrible at note taking because I can't listen and write at the same time. Are you left-handed? I'm left-handed. I'm actually probably that weird kind of left-handed. What do they call cross brain? I was thinking about our relationship with written language in the sense that Terrence Deacon is talking about it as an addiction. Um, Good. Thanks for following Terry. Terry is a font of interesting approaches to this. He's also one of these guys who hasn't turned success into incuriosity the way so many does. Um, he doesn't. He's interesting. And I mean that he's interesting as a person, but he's also his ideas just keep on knocking me out. Okay, so written language is not an addiction for all of us. Uh, Language is probably an addiction for almost all of us. Um, that is, we couldn't do without it. Some people don't write much, but it's becoming, you could say, more of an addiction through social media. It's certainly an addiction for me. I'm totally addicted to words and in all their forms. And I actually don't give a shit about medium. What I say is about ideas, I'm a prude. About delivery, I'm a slut. I'll say it anyway, but I'm trying to get the ideas across accurately. Um, so the disruptive relationship with our own ability to remember have made human cultures believe that we have overestimated the importance of books, maybe leading to holy books. See if this helps. See if this relates. I don't know if it helps. I don't know that you're asking. I like ideas that are not finished. Me too. And notice how this relates. So the pretty central to my approach is this thing I call the last word paradox, is that words make us crave last words that further words make impossible. But written words are interesting because you can have a sense of completeness. You can completeness in the sense of a sacred text that actually lays it down pat. But one of the problems with writing is that you have evidence of your own contradictions and you're putting it out. If you publish it or you put it out in the world in any way, then other people can expose your contradictions. One of the main things that Trump has done is he's turned hypocrisy into a badge of honor. Um, and uh, I think I could say the same about sacred texts. For a long time now, I've thought that sacred texts are touted, they're sold as if they are a complete and pat recipe for how to live. But they don't read like that at all. They read like a catalog of rationalizations, moralizations, and justifications for doing whatever you want. And this is, I mean, I could cite chapter and verse, but I don't have to. I can look at history and say, look at the variety of things that are justified by the Holy Bible. It's obvious that the advantage of it is that so it's a trump card in that it's complete. It's sacred, but it's a wild card in that you can take anything you want out of it. You can interpret it any way you want. That would be what humans would want. They would want to be able to believe whatever ornaments them and claim that it trumps everything else. That's all I think that these movements are about. They're a wild card, trump card, branded to some thing like Christianity or MAGA or something like that. So if you like ideas that are not finished, you're in the game that interests me, which is all of the answers become springboards to next questions. Um, uh, uh, When I find an idea that fits, I like to kick back and just sit. When I find an idea that fit, I like to kick back and just sit on my laurels, but then a resulting dilemma proves questions in life just don't quit. I like a good both and solution, but it hardly provides resolution. After feeling elated that things are related, there's untangling co-contribution. These are limericks I came up with early on in this work when I was realizing that there was kind of an ironic attitude about the way that ideas don't quit, that they are unfinished, that we live in an incomplete universe, that incompleteness is another way to say it is that change happens. And there's even change in how change happens, that there's emergence. And so trying to understand how emergence works is its own fruitful exercise in futility. I do not assume I'll have a last word on this, but I assume it's hella fruitful to engage in it. Okay. Jeremy, as we have some of your thoughts, can we have some of your thoughts on psychopathy and psychopaths? Thank you for asking. This is a new issue. Uh, I'm dealing with. So I get these clients. I put myself out there as someone who can help you deal with jerks or assholes or narcissists. And I'll get people who get in touch, and often they'll say, I feel like I'm dealing with a narcissist or a psychopath or something like that. Okay, so psychopathy is in general treated as a intrinsic, innate quality in someone where they do not have even basal skin response to torture of others. Um, Narcissism or sociopathy are treated more as uh, acquired characteristics. Someone may not necessarily have been born like a psychopath with those capacities to not feel, not care, not feel compassion. Um, but a narcissist is someone uh, who learns that skill. And so this is interesting because I'm trying to draw on more clients. I could use to have more clients, and at the same time, I don't think it starts out well when, let's say, a partner comes in saying, "I think that my partner has uh, NPD," which is what I'll often get because I have it. I think we all have it to some degree, and degrees matter a whole lot. We were talking about it earlier. As a language speaking creature, I am unusually anxious because I have all these concepts floating around. I have my vanity, I have my ego. I would say, though probably not as much as I used to, that we are all sadonarcissistic, meaning that there are two ways to self elevate. One is to lift ourselves up, and the other is to put other people down. And that would just be something that would be kind of natural for humans. And once again, the question is, how do you manage it? Um, uh, and so, um, so I have lost some potential clients by making this point to them, which is, um, I don't know that it's productive for you if you're coming to me looking for a psych eval, like a clinical psychology evaluation, which says your partner is a narcissist. He could be. There are absolute narcissists in the world. Trump would be an example of it. There are also absolute narcissists in specific aspects of their life. So they might be decent at work, but they're terrible to their spouse in a systematically absolute total jerk kind of way. But I'm much more interested in how we manage and exercise the appetites to feel exceptional and how to gain some balance in a partnership, let's say, between people who are both in love three ways. I love you, I love me, I love us. So it's six loves. And how to manage that is much more interesting to me than saying, well, no, your partner is clearly a narcissist and that proves you're not, and all that sort of stuff. And it's a complication. Because I'm trying to say something subtler, and because I'm not a clinical psychologist. I actually don't think they do a great job with this. I mean, because they're so into the categorization and description, which to me is borderline poetic naturalism. They'll say that this person has this thing. So we're talking about an abstraction. They have narcissistic personality disorder. Um, and it's like they swallowed something, but it's an abstraction. Okay. Let's see. Uh, yes. So those are some ideas about psychopaths and psychopathy. Uh, they're hard to live with. Um, and we're stuck living with them. So that's a lot of where my work goes. But it's whether they are born that way, whether they were traumatized into the state of being an absolutist or an assolutist or an asshole or a narcissist or whatever you want to call them, gaslight or whatever. Um, Whether they traumatized into it, whether they were spoiled into it, what I keep on coming back to is we have to appreciate how much fun it would be to get to live that way. That playing God is easier than being human if you can get away with it. So a lot of my work is on how to keep people from getting away with it. And I don't that is really fruitful exercise in futility because they want to get away with it. So anyway, let's see. Okay, we're winding down here. There are some things. A lot of Echo's 14 points are based on hypocrisy. I'm gonna have to look that up because I don't know Echo's work much. I should. You're talking about Umberto Eco. He's a semiotician of a different breed than mine. He's definitely engaged in what I would call poetic naturalism, and as a result, I haven't read nearly enough of him. Um, let's see, because I don't think he's as grounded in the physical as I think Terry's work is. The more you learn, the less you know, and yet the more you learn and the less you know, the more fun it might be to keep learning. Um, that's my sense of it, at least. The better you get at not feeling like the best in the room, the better you get to be. That's something I've had to go through. Um, no, for 20 years in this stuff, I just felt total imposter syndrome. Like I didn't really get to think about this stuff. And over time, you get to say, yeah, no, you get to keep on thinking about this stuff. You're doing fine. It's human stuff. You can think about it. It's not that hard. It's just unfamiliar at first. Let's see. Okay, so I'm stating as received wisdom, not a fact. Let's see. I'd have to see what that is. Uh, I'm just going to take a quick look because we're getting there. Um, let's see. Yeah, let's see. I'm not sure what which thing you're referring to there. I'll say I find all the pop psych influencers on a bit samey. Uh, was keen to see how you felt with our current reality. Oh well, so Crumbly. Um, it's a very seductive thing that a lot of them offer, which is they say it. I mean, if this is a place where introspection is not active and it's fun. So if you get someone like Dr. Ramani, she's coming on like an expert. I think that psychology is way too young and way too poetic naturalist to claim to be an expert. I don't think you can be. It's not rocket science. It's way harder than rocket science. And I say that to my client who is literally a rocket scientist at a very high level. I say, dude, I know you're dealing with these psychological problems. Remember, they're not rocket science, much harder. But anyway, they come on and they flatter the audience by saying, you're dealing with a narcissist, right? This is what they're like. This is what you have to do. Here's the simple recipe for how you're going to get out of it. But they also assume that their audience members, because audience members feel like they're dealing with narcissists, they don't have narcissism because other people have it. I wrote an article for Psychology Today at one point, which is how to diagnose a narcissism diagnoser, because I actually think that's a big problem. Is that if someone's not into me, they're a narcissist, right? Or if someone cares about their priorities over mine, they're a narcissist. It's a real problem. So let's see. I find all the bit samey. Yes, they don't much fit with my reality. It's too much poetic naturalism. I don't think they're even figuring out. I pay much more attention to what we are from the ground up, from the origins of life, through the development of nervous systems in animals, through the development of or the evolution of language in humans, and with continuity. I never get to use an abstraction, even an abstraction like information, until I've explained how it emerges and what it is in physical terms. Whereas psychology is working at a very different level. They've got empirical studies, though a lot of them are dealing with replication problems, and they're coming up with laws and diagrams or schematics, but they're abstract. And that's a different approach. I've gotten things out of psychology. I read a lot of psychology, but I'm not that enthusiastic about the methodology. And then when you turn it into pop psychology, where basically everybody feels like a genius because they're the authority on what's wrong with the person who's disappointed them, not appealing to me. That doesn't work. That version of public intellectual doesn't interest me much. Okay. Yes, I should read Foucault's Penguin. Let's see. There is little known European TV series. Yes, I started to watch that. Uh, I love that deep shade of blue. I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but there it is. Okay. There is a deep shade of blue that I like too. It's kind of like a dark French blue. I'm aware that the blue is currently black. Oh, my walls. Watch this. I can fancy this up almost. Just a second. Here we go. Here's my deep shade of blue. Here's what happened. Um, let's see. Can you see it there? Um, the blue of my walls. Yeah, so I'll tell you what happened. There was a woman who had won an Emmy for a set design for a children's show during the time of Pee Wee Herman. And she got very enthusiastic about my work. And I had these orange faux walls in here, and she said, they got to go. And she picked out this blue for me. And I painted it all up. Let me see if you can see it. Hold on a second. I'm going to turn it up. And yeah, there it is. It's a nice color. I like it. All right, you guys and gals and loves of my life. Thank you for being here. This is very good, very spiriting for me. I ask you this week, come up with at least one idea, half baked, some notion, catch it within 30 seconds, or you will lose it. Um, uh, and then write it down and then bring it next time. Enough of my damn ideas. I want to hear yours, okay? We can play with your ideas. And thank you, those of you who brought them. Thank you, Chris, for bringing your ideas. And bring them without that only brainchild syndrome thing going on. Let your idea be something that we can play with, that we can toss around, that we can get the tires on. Okay. All right. And some of you I will see tomorrow. We're having the meeting, the study group about how to engage with people there's no talking to, how to deal with people who have become absolutists. And thank you for being here, you guys. See you next time.